I am so thrilled today to have a guest on Boozy Bee, and it's George Garrett. He is a podcaster, author of true crime.
Mhm.
And so we're going to let George introduce himself, and then we're just going to jump in and start asking questions.
Sure. So my name is George Jared. My background is I'm an investigative journalist, which kind of parlayed me into becoming a true crime author because I was covering a lot of high profile murder cases as a journalist. Eventually, I had written 5 books in total, and so I became a podcaster. I'd been a guest on a lot of podcasts, podcasts all over the country, and a lot of TV shows and documentaries and stuff like that because people wanted to know about some of these cases. And so I started my own podcast just because the number of messages I would get from people around literally the world.
Mm.
I mean, it was nothing for me to get 100 messages in a day asking me for updates on some of these cases I had worked on. So I started a podcast called Diamond State Murder Board, and the idea was I would just come on like once a week maybe and do 20 to 30 minutes and just talk about these different cases and where they're at, because cases are all in different places. It kind of evolved from that. We did start bringing on guests and experts and stuff like that to talk about some of this stuff. A couple of the guests that we've had in the past, we had the Bind, Torture, Kill serial killer's daughter, Carrie Rouse, and she wrote a New York Times best-selling book about her dad's case. And then we had like some people might be familiar with the Delphi murders up in Indiana. Had the sister of one of the victims. She came on. Had Russ Faria. If you guys ever saw the show, the thing about Pam on NBC.
Yes.
Okay, well, Russ Faria, the guy that whole series is based on, the guy who was falsely convicted of killing his wife in Missouri, met him at CrimeCon and brought him on as a guest and talked with him. That series was actually pretty good. Renee Zellweger played
Mm-hmm.
the crazy Pam woman who actually killed everybody, killed a lot of people that nobody knew about. So anyway, so that's kind of how that started. And I'm also the co-host of another podcast called Break the Case through AMU University.
Okay.
Jennifer Buchholz, my partner. We don't know what to call each other because she's a criminology professor. She was a counterintelligence officer or agent. I always say it wrong. It's not officer, it's agent in the U.S. Army. Her job was to vet, like terrorists, basically locals who worked on bases in Afghanistan and Iraq. Her job was to vet them to make sure they weren't terrorists.
Oh.
And so she lives in Colorado Springs. Her and I just jump in and start working on some of these cases together. We did co-write a book together, but we also co-host Break the Case, that podcast. And it's a long form podcast, meaning that each season is all about one particular
Oh,
case.
okay.
Whereas my podcast is about usually every episode something different.
Got it. So is there a particular, well, first of all, the way George and I met through mutual friends is Carol Langston and
Mm-hmm.
Stephanie Saunders. And George went to Line College, and that's where I work. So we have that in common. Um, and so Carol was like, "You've got to get George on your YouTube channel and talk to him." So she was really encouraging me to do this, in which I'm very grateful. We had a very nice conversation on the phone. And so I asked George, I said, "What kind of cocktail do you like?" And he said, "Gin." So the cocktail that we have today is a gin based cocktail. It's called Blood on the Page. And I think it's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
um, I
Very good.
wish I would have shown you guys how it looked when I was pouring the pomegranate in it, because it kind of, looked like blood going in there. So that's great. All right. So the reason I wanted to do this is just to get one, let people know. My ultimate goal is to introduce people to authors around the state,
Mm-hmm.
and just to let people realize that we have these really good authors and books that are um, based in Arkansas, or the authors are based in Arkansas, and then we have talent here in our little state. So I want everyone to get to know you, and I want to get to know you. So my question, number one question is, um, what really pulled you in to be so interested in true crime?
So when I was at Lyon College, my whole goal was to go to law school. And when I was a senior, I met a lot of miserable lawyers. And and also met a lot of broke lawyers, and I thought I could be miserable, I could be broke, but I can't be both.
Doesn't John Grisham talk about that a lot?
He
How
does.
his lawyers are broke and miserable.
Yeah, he does. John Grisham from Arkansas.
Yes, yeah. Man, wouldn't that be something if we could
Yeah.
interview him?
I've actually I've done a magazine story with him before.
Really? Wow.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He was actually born at St. Bernard's Hospital in Jonesboro.
Wow.
Yeah,
I did not know that.
yeah. When you go by the Grisham Farms in
Hmm.
like up in Mississippi, Poinsett County up there, that's their farms.
Oh, does he still own it up there?
I'm not sure if they still own it, but they keep the name. Even if they don't, I'm sure they keep
Yeah.
the name just because of the namesake. No, so I did what anybody would do who doesn't want to be poor and miserable. I decided I would go get a job at a newspaper, working as a journalist. And my first boss, who I actually just ran into a couple of weeks ago, very shockingly, because I just happened to be in the spot where he lives 2.5 hours away from where I was at. And he just happened to be driving by and see me getting out of my car. I didn't even know what my car looked like.
Wow.
And he just
Yeah.
pulled up and I saw him and I was like, hey, what's going on? But he told me, he said, just come here, work for me for a year. I'll clean up your writing. I'll let you cover, a lot of like stuff that lawyers would cover. He goes, in a year from now, you're going to go to law school. That's what's going to end up happening. I was like, okay. So I started working for him. First 6-7 months, I was at school board meetings and city government and quorum court, and every now and then I'd have to go cover a wreck or something. But then I'll never forget, it was a Wednesday morning, and I'm sitting at my desk. I'm getting ready to just go out and visit different places and pass out free newspapers. See, the thing about being a journalist is if you want to get the dirt on what's going on, like in the mayor's office or inside the quorum court or whatever entity you're looking into, the mayor's not going to just come out and say, hey, I'm committing corruption, I'm stealing money. They're not going to do it like that. So you got to find, usually it's like a secretary or a janitor or somebody who just work.
Right.
You didn't hear this from me, but so I'd go out and pass out newspapers to try to make connections. And I was getting ready to do that. Phone rings. I pick it up. I go, hello. This woman says, we can't find my niece. And she was a 22-year-old college student. And so I go down to the sheriff's department. Her mom's there. Her dad, Dr. Larry Gould's there. Her mom hands me a missing poster. She was a 22-year-old college student. She'd been staying at the home of a on again, off again boyfriend. Like, she was going to a community college up in Northwest Arkansas, but she would come home to the Melbourne area on the weekends to hang out with her friends and all this other stuff. And she would go and stay at his house some. And so we spend the week looking for them, for her. I'm sorry, not them. She'd been in the house when the police went into the house. Her car was there, her keys were there, her phone was there, her money was there. The story is that the sort of ex-boyfriend was at work, that she dropped him off, went back to the house to collect her things to go back to Northwest Arkansas. She was supposed to pick a sister up, Danielle, and go back. Well, she never shows up. Well, he never goes home. He goes straight from work to a friend's house to hang out with some friends, and then they go watch a movie in Batesville, and then they end up back at this other friend's house. They smoke some pot, and then he falls asleep and then wakes up the next morning and goes straight to work.
And that's his story.
That's his story.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
And so when the police finally did a welfare check that next morning, they found bloody sheets in the washing machine. They found a flipped mattress with blood on it. They found that the bed had been moved from the other side of the room to cover a blood spot on the floor. It looked like a tornado had gone through there. All of her stuff was there. Her uninjured dog was in there. There were three things missing: her, a very large suitcase with rollers that she owned, and the front piano leg off of a piano in the living room. Now, the piano leg was known to come loose.
Okay.
Yeah. So we spend the next week looking for her. Well, a week later, it's early in the morning. I'm down in Melbourne. I'm at the courthouse. And I was trying to figure out where they were going to be searching that day. And so there's some ladies walking, and one lady, I heard it, walking around the courthouse, kind of like we do in the South, and I heard her say they were out searching near her property or property she owned. And so I said, ma'am, where's this property at? And she said it was down Highway 9. So I go to Highway 9. Highway 9 is a thoroughfare that connects Melbourne to the town of Mountain View. It's very treacherous, very windy, probably one of the more dangerous roads in Arkansas. And so I go down there, I get about 5 miles down this road, and I see a line of cars on the side of the road. I get out of my truck, I start walking over. I see a searcher, somebody who had been out searching for her. To this day, I still don't know the guy's name.
Mm.
And oh, and just as a frame of reference, this is September 27th, 2004.
Okay.
Just so you have the timeline down.
Mm-hmm.
And she disappeared exactly 1 week before.
Okay.
So I see the searcher and I said, "Hey, are you guys out here looking for Rebecca?" And he looks at me and he says, "She's right there." And I look down this embankment, and sure enough, there she
Oh
was.
my gosh.
She was clad in a t-shirt and panties. She was very badly decomposed. And through the years, I've always it's always been a quandary for me talking about her condition, because like literally I talked about it once in one of my books, and her sister told me that she literally was reading it and literally just took the book and threw it up against the
Right.
wall. But then conversely, her father, Dr. Larry Gould, told me that he wants that description out there because he wanted the people who did this to her to know what they did.
So one of my favorite authors is Karen Slaughter, and she writes very, very graphic novels, and it's usually about women that's being um, beat,
Mm-hmm.
beat to death and death, and she won't pull back because she wants people to know what other humans can do to the human body, and so she holds nothing back. And I did notice when I was reading some of your writings that you're very descriptive,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's great because that puts you in actually in the place of,
Mm-hmm.
like you can, and I think that's part of a good writer when you can actually lose yourself in that writing or that place, and like you were just describing those roads, winding and treacherous, and so I think that's great. Did you? So there's the body.
Mm-hmm.
And had the police already gotten there and found it, or were the searchers?
They were starting to put up like crime scene tape. There was, I believe, there was an unmarked police car there.
Mhm.
It was a detective. He was already out there. They were putting up the crime scene tape. I think the sheriff arrived as I was leaving, and later on he was directing traffic. What's crazy is, as bad as that wasn't the worst thing that happened to me that day.
My goodness.
So I go back to the sheriff's department. I pull in. I see Danielle, that one sister, and Rebecca had several sisters, by the way. I see the one sister. She's on the concrete, like the in front of the building, and she's just sitting down, head in between her knees, and she's crying like crazy. And her dad, Dr. Larry Gould, came running up to me and he said, "Did they find my daughter?" And I said, "Larry, you need to go talk to the sheriff right now." And he grabs me and he says, "Did they find my daughter?"
Mm.
And I said, "Yes." And the guy started crying. He put his head right here. I'd known him for 5 days at this point. And so that's kind of what started me down the true crime path. Um, that case went unsolved for 16 years. I wrote about it periodically. I moved on to other newspaper companies, but I've always said this on my every resume that I ever submitted. At the top of the list was the stories I wrote about Rebecca Gould. I still have her missing poster to this day sitting in my house. Um, the investigation into it, what happened in this case was the detective who had the case had a false theory of what happened to her. He thought that she had been killed in some type of like drug thing, when the problem was there was no drugs in her system. She had smoked some marijuana and stuff like that. But this guy that he was going after was kind of like hardcore into drugs, but he just knew her from high school, and there was no association with her and hardcore drugs of any kind. So it didn't make any sense. And also, it was over what was pretty minuscule dead. And there was one part of the case I couldn't understand. So her body's moved 8 miles away. The piano leg is used as a murder weapon. There's a cleanup at the house. If this was a drug deal or drug thing, why didn't they come with a gun, shoot her, and then just take a match and torch the place?
Right.
None of it made sense. Yeah. So I was on a podcast called Hell and Gone in 2018. Catherine Townsend, she was a reporter for the Discovery Channel. She wanted to do a series on Rebecca's case. I agreed to be in multiple episodes of it. A woman named Jennifer Buchholz heard me on that podcast. She was, I think I just told you, I gave you a resume. The State Department has literally sent her across the world to train police. She'd call me from like some place. I'm like, "Where are you at?" She's like, "I can't tell you, but she says I'm really good at guessing where she's at. I don't know how." And I figured out one time she was in Southeast Asia.
Wow.
So anyway, so her and I teamed up after she heard me. She lives in Colorado Springs. She had never been to Arkansas in her life. So she started making trips here, dragging her poor husband Jesse down here. And so we started tackling this case together. Well, we started writing about it, podcasting about it, going on TV shows, doing whatever we could do. So eventually we put enough pressure on the state police that they finally assigned a new detective to the case. And this detective was really good. I'll say this, I think it would be fair to say that he saw the case the way we did, that whoever killed her had to have a personal connection to the house. And so there was a lot of pressure and heat put on the sort of ex-boyfriend,
Right.
because his alibi for being at work was kind of wishy-washy. It wasn't as solid as we were led to believe once we got the case filed. But through the process of this, we started a Facebook group for Rebecca's case. And one of our earliest members was a guy named William Miller. William was Rebecca's sort of ex-boyfriend's first cousin. Now, at first, we weren't very suspicious of him because a lot of family members from that family joined the page. And he lived 11 hours away at the time of the murder in Aransas Pass, Texas. And at the time he joined our page, he was living in the Philippines. He had married a Filipino woman. He worked on oil rigs all over the world, made a lot of money. And so he was living in the Philippines. But he was doing something very weird. He was trying to conceal his identity. Like, we would kind of like, because he would make a lot of comments on posts. He had a lot of theories, and he would talk a lot. And so every now and then, Jennifer would ask him, like, so, like, are you an American? Where are you from? Blah, blah, blah. And he was very evasive. He would not just tell us. And so we thought that was kind of suspicious, but we're like, whatever. Well, 2 months before there's an arrest in Rebecca's case, and this is September of 2020, we find out something very startling. He was in Melbourne the weekend of the murder. And so all of a sudden, we're starting to look at some of his comments. He's DM'd Jennifer like 600 times, and I'm not exaggerating. He had sent her 600 direct messages in the course of 10 months. And so we started like, wait a minute. So we kind of created like a profile of who we thought killed her. And the profile would be someone in that family, the McCullough family. And it starts with Casey, who's obviously the boyfriend. You start with him because he has the most reason to kill her. And then you go, he's got some brothers, and he's got a father, and then he's got male cousins. And so the profile was someone who had a connection to that house and that property. So
They had to know that the piano leg was like,
oh yeah,
really, who just randomly comes in and goes, oh, I'll just grab this,
right,
piano leg.
right.
Yeah.
I'm going to come in here and
Yeah.
I wonder if this will come
Yeah,
loose.
you're right.
Right. And I actually told the original detective that one time. I'm like, because he came to one of my book signings and he was like, I said, can't we take everybody in the world as a suspect and now we can narrow it down to who knows that the piano leg will come loose?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, that's kind of obvious to me.
Yeah.
And I find myself watching true crime documentaries, and when they start laying all this stuff out, and some of the things that they say is so obvious, and I know it's because they've done all this work and then they're trying to get it to where you can wrap it up in an hour, and I know that it doesn't take it takes a lot longer than an hour to
Right, right.
to figure all this stuff out. But one of the things that I do realize, and I don't know why the police officers don't, like, it always seems like they zone in on someone,
Right.
and then they can't get that, they can't see the big picture because they're so zoned into somebody else, like, and I don't know if that's because they're just so wanting to get it done,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the reason that they, and as we know, there's lots of people out there that are in jail or prison, that shouldn't be there.
Right.
Or there's people out there that all these unsolved
Right.
because they couldn't even think that that person would have been able to do that. I
Right.
think and I just wonder, when they go through the academy, do they just, I guess it'd be interesting to see what they teach them in the academy, like
Right.
how you get so laser focused, and then there has to be something that goes, well, that just doesn't fit, and we can go and look at somebody else.
Right. See, like when that detective was constantly going after the other guy claimed, he said this many times, that he had never been to that house and never knew where that house was. Well, here's the thing: if this was a planned execution, the hole would have been dug out in the woods somewhere if they were going to move the body.
Right.
Now and I've covered execution style type murders before, and literally the person shows up with a gun, they put a bullet in your head, they walk out. And this guy was not a very sophisticated criminal. I mean, you got to understand what he was having to believe was that this guy walked into this house, grabbed this piano leg, hit her in the head, loaded her body up in the car, drove her around. Well, if he's doing all that, do you think he's leaving fingerprints at the scene
Yeah, I mean, there
or
would be so
DNA?
much DNA
Right,
everywhere.
right.
Yeah.
And there was no DNA. Obviously, they never found his DNA there. They never found his fingerprints there. So I'm just sitting there going, what does common sense tell you?
Right.
Yeah. So this guy's not a sophisticated criminal. He gets caught all the time. I mean, he went to jail for a while because one of the other suspects in the case, Rebecca's ex-boyfriend from like high school, had said something about him being a suspect. He shows up at this guy's house and tries to beat him up, and he knows that the police are already after him, and he gets like 4 years in prison for
Something stupid.
something stupid. So it never made any sense. Um, so the new detective, he starts from square one. He goes to Casey, the boyfriend, which Casey, he should have went after him. Not only is he a boyfriend, but another man signed a sworn affidavit claiming that Casey confessed to him.
Mm.
So there was plenty of reason to go after him, and then there was reason to go after everybody else. Well, William Miller, and his name, he goes by Billy. So if I use the term Billy, I'm talking about
Okay.
him. He goes after him. Well, this is during COVID. Billy is not a national in the Philippines, so he can't go home when he's working. He has to.
What's this on the news? I feel like this was on the. Did it come out?
It made
Yeah.
national news.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I kind of now that you're saying this, I'm kind of like, oh, okay, and I kind of remember this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It made national news, and there's a reason. Well, there's two reasons. So he has to go back to Cottage Grove, Oregon, because that's where his mom lives. So when he comes off the rig, he goes home. Well, the new detective, Mike McNeil, he decides he's going to fly out to Oregon and interview him on November 7th, 2020. Mike goes out there, and he wanted to interview Linda, the mom, Billy's mom, and also Billy's brother, Jeremy, because literally while this is happening, when Rebecca goes missing, they all pack up and leave. Like, they pack up 2 U-Hauls, and this is just 2 miles down the road from where she's murdered. They pack up their U-Hauls, and they all move to Texas. Like, Linda and Jeremy were living there because that's why he came up to visit them. And in this 36-hour period where she goes missing, they load up 2 U-Hauls and they head back to Aransas Pass, Texas, all of them.
Wow.
So it doesn't make any sense. And in fact, he was interviewed originally in the case. His name was in the case file before her body was ever found, because they asked Casey, who was around, and he said, well, my cousin came over and visited Sunday night before the murder. So anyway, so Mike flies out to Oregon. He's going to interview all 3 of them. He gets Billy in a room. He tricks him. He says, because he had been doing live, like polygraph with all the other McCullough male family members. And he said, well, if we ever had the ability to do it, would you be willing, if you were ever in Arkansas again, to do one? He goes, oh, yeah. What Billy didn't know was that he already had a polygrapher already outside.
Oh, right there.
In a different room. So he fakes like, hey, do you guys is there somebody available who could do this? Blah, blah, blah. And he goes, oh, yeah, we're right here. And so they just come in the door, and of course, he's really scared at this point. And so they hook him up, and he fails miserably, obviously. Well, then the detective who gave him the test said, hey, Mike's got to come in. He's got a couple things he needs to tell you. So he leaves. Mike comes in, pulls out a picture of a rag that they found at the crime scene. And he goes, guess what? We have the killer's DNA on this rag. And then he pulls out a picture of the inside of Billy's truck from 2004. And he goes, and guess what we found here? We found Rebecca's DNA next to the gas pedal. How did it get there? And so then he just breaks down and starts confessing. He says he showed up. Casey was at work. He showed up, pulled his truck into the back. Never gave a reason why, but he's obviously a sex predator. He went to the door, knocked on the door, said he needed to use a phone. He was having car trouble. and he said that this murderous rage just came over him. He just started walking back and forth, and the piano leg just fell down, and he grabbed it. She had retreated to the back room. He takes it, smashes her in the head twice with it. It breaks. Then he says he goes to the. He never said he put her on the bed, but he obviously did because there was blood on the bed. Then he goes to the closet, grabs a necktie out, wraps it around her neck, and strangles her until she's dead. And then he wraps her in a sheet. He tried to stuff her in the suitcase that was missing, but she wouldn't quite fit. She was small, but it wasn't quite big enough. So then he takes her, throws her in the back of his truck. He drives down this gravel road that connects the McCullough property to the spot where she's found, which is very desolate. And he got married like 2 weeks later.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was his first wife, not the wife he married in the Philippines. So anyway, after he confesses to Rebecca's murder, confesses to 5 more.
Oh my goodness, man! Did they do something? Did 2020 do something on this? I feel like I really seem like, because the rig part.
Mm-hmm.
I used to work with Chesapeake with oil riggers and stuff, and so when I hear stories about
Right,
it, sticks with me, and so I feel like that there's
there's
something
there's
I have.
been 2 hour-long shows done about it. Um, CW Network did a really good show on actually there's just 2 hours. It's basically a documentary about the
Mm-hmm.
case. Their Crime Nation show, that's the one I would recommend
Oh,
because
okay.
Dateline did it, but they did an awful job.
Or maybe I saw it while I was researching some of the stories you were telling me about. There's a lady on YouTube that does some stories. Maybe it's the CW.
It's probably CW
Yeah,
Network.
maybe that's who it is. So this was your first one,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure it made a very big impact, because when you were talking about it, you kind of got a little
Yeah.
teary. I noticed that. But this is just the beginning. I mean, you've been involved in a lot of
Yes.
true crime. Does it ever get too overwhelming for you? Like, how do you process all of this in your head? Like, when you're studying and interviewing these people that are involved, or let George is very involved in the West Memphis Three,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody knows a little bit about the West Memphis Three, and there were a lot of injustice done in that case,
Mm-hmm.
and it's still going on to this day. How do you wrap your head? You know, I read lots and lots of books, and sometimes I'm like, I just have to step away from it, and I call them Mary Poppins books, just to get my
Yeah.
head out of it. And that's just fiction. How do you process it in real life? Like, because you're reading this that some real human has done,
Yeah.
and you're meeting these people that you think are guilty, or in your heart
Yeah.
that are guilty. How do you process that? How do you come to terms with it when you either see them in jail or you see them walking? Like, you knew that guy, after you had read all this stuff, knew that he was guilty, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I talked to him numerous times, or knew something about him. How do you process that?
Well, at first it was hard because every time you came into a new case, you were experiencing something way different. Like Rebecca's case, I saw her,
Right.
and her killer was on our Facebook page talking to us, and then I actually went and interviewed him in prison after he got convicted. Um, which, by the way, when he confessed, he called me a scumbag and he hated me, and he said he wanted to come to one of my book signings and knock me out. He sent a text message to his cousin saying that. So,
Did you say, come on, buddy?
yeah, no, I mean
Bring it.
literally. Well, and Jennifer has come back to Arkansas several times to like film different TV shows and stuff like that. And every time she comes, she'll go and visit him
Oh, wow.
because she's trying to. He never gave the names of the other 5 victims, and so we're trying to figure out who those victims are. Um, and then have some cases like I covered. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Elliott murders up in Dalton.
I don't think so.
Family of 4. It's like a rainy night, and there's a knock at the door. Friend needs help with a car that's broken down. I think it's by the 11 Point River. It's by a river about a mile from their house. Within 1 hour, mom, dad, little girl, or little boy are slaughtered like animals, and the little 8-year-old girl was taken.
Wow.
and they found her bones in a creek a couple of years later, and that's why the second book I wrote was called The Creekside Bones. And I didn't realize it at the time, but when I was covering the capital murder trials for the two guys who were convicted of that crime, I would scream in my sleep.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
because it's very dramatic. I mean, and covering two identical capital murder trials, or they weren't capital, they were first degree, um, but literally the cases are the same against both. So you know exactly what's coming. You've already been through one, so you know exactly what's coming in the second one. And I could predict as soon as the jurors, I knew when all the eyeballs were going to start watering. I mean, I knew it.
Mhm.
So what it's kind of funny. What I do to try to get my mind off of that is I write about a lot of other stuff too.
Okay.
I write a lot about agriculture. I write a lot about economics. I've done feature stories with literally everybody you can imagine in the world. I've done feature stories with entertainers, celebrities, astrophysicists. Today I told you I was out, talking to a Medal of Honor winner.
Right.
I've interviewed Tuskegee Airmen. There's you would be hard pressed to find. I've interviewed professional athletes. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find some genre that I've written about religion before.
Mm.
I mean, so
So you have to just get yourself out of that to go back in.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. So is there one particular case that just digs at you? Like it's like a hangnail. It just keeps gnawing at you. Is there one particular one that you just can't let go and you just have to keep it in the back of your head at all times, or do you just let it you just have to let it
I would say that pretty much all the cases I've covered, a lot of them have been adjudicated. So once that happens, it's good. Rebecca's case, obviously,
right?
because it was my very first one and it was the longest. And
And it's in I mean, you're from Salem.
mhm,
Salem's a lot like Melbourne,
yeah,
and it's just down the road. So it's close to your heart. It's your countrymen, if
yeah,
we can say that. So yeah, and it was your first one that you really were right in the middle of it.
yeah.
So yeah.
And West Memphis Three, I mean, that one, just because it's so crazy. I mean, I ended up so it happened in 1993, which I was like in junior high, I think maybe. So obviously I didn't cover it from the beginning. But starting in 2008, they have these things what are called Rule 37 hearings. And so basically that's your last attempt to try to get a new trial. And a lot of times a Rule 37 hearing can last way longer than the original trials because literally you can bring anything in. You can bring any argument you want before a judge to try to get a new trial. So, obviously the defense teams were trying to bring in, they had by 2008. And if anybody's not familiar with the West Memphis Three case, they can come and my podcast, Diamond State Murder Board. I do a recap of all the details, but
And it's still going on to today
to
because of
this day.
the DNA that they have started. Have they started on the DNA, the
So
touch DNA?
so what happened is these guys get released in 2011. They plead to what's called an Alford plea, which is Alford versus North Carolina. It's this weird legal mechanism that the Supreme Court has ruled is admissible. Um, that you can walk into a court of law and say, I'm innocent of these charges, but I acknowledge that the state could bring charges against me. So all three walked into court, and I was sitting in the courtroom when this happened. Um, beat the New York Times by 2 hours, letting everybody know that they were going to
You
get
just
released.
scooped the.
I did. I got them. Which I can tell you some stories about the New York Times, good and bad, that I've had experiences with. I've been on the front page of the New York Times about me, which was not good. Well, it was okay, but it wasn't great. Um, so anyway, and I've had stories published in the New York Times a bunch. But anyway, so they get released. They still profess their innocence. They say we didn't do this. So about 6 years ago, there's this thing called it's called MVAC, and what it is if I touch your shirt, let's say, and it's coarse enough, enough skin cells might come off where this machine can come in. It's like a little vacuum cleaner. It comes in and it can remove those cells, and then it drops it into a solution, which then a filter comes up and takes it, and then they can take that filter and they can look for DNA.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's very it's an advance in DNA technology for sure. So Damien Eccles, before the pandemic started, approached the prosecution and said, "Hey, could we do some MVAC DNA testing on the shoelaces that bound the little boys. And the prosecutor at the time, Scott Ellington, said he was pretty agreeable to. He's like, yeah, we could do that. Well, then Scott gets elected in a special election like a couple weeks later to become a judge. So he's out of the prosecutor's office. Then COVID hits, and then they appoint a new prosecutor. Well, I was eating lunch at a Kiwanis Club meeting, and the new prosecutor was there. He had been appointed by the governor, and him and I was doing a feature story on him, being appointed. And at the very, very end, I just said, oh, yeah, by the way, Damian Eccles is hoping to have this stuff tested. Are you going to allow for the testing? And of course, me being naive, I thought the answer was, of course. I mean, why wouldn't you want to test it? And he goes, no. He goes, I'm going to ask a judge to have all the evidence destroyed.
Wow.
And I was like, and then, of course,
Wow.
I think you can tell by the look on my face. I was like, what? And he was like, technically, they are convicted of second-degree murder now. He said, we only have to keep evidence in cases like that for 10 years. So on August 19th of 2021 would be the 10-year anniversary. So later that year, this was in April of 2021, I was talking to him about it. So he wants, or doesn't want, but he says he's going to ask for all the evidence to be destroyed. And I told him at the time, I said, I understand that is the, that's the protocol. And people don't understand. If they tried to keep all the evidence in all the murder cases, they would have to have warehouse space. It would cost millions and millions of dollars. They just can't do it.
Right.
Some of the stuff has to be destroyed.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, I understand this protocol, but do you think you want to do that in this case? And so
this is a high, touchy.
Yeah.
Lots of people are involved in it. Yeah.
Well, I've argued this all over the country that there are two individual cases that are most of the stuff that we think about in the true crime world involve serial killers, it's all that. But as far as famous individual cases, there's only one other case that's as famous as West Memphis Three, and that's John Benet Ramsey. Those are the two. And
both are unsolved, right?
Well, technically West Memphis Three is,
yeah.
but it's not.
Yeah, and John Benet
is not
at all.
No. In fact, I have met her father several times at several different things I've gone to. So anyway, so it starts a furor. I write a story about it. Everybody goes crazy and they're all mad. They want the stuff tested. So the state keeps fighting it. They don't want it tested, so they take it to court. Well, I'll tell you what happened later that year. So they claimed that the evidence was lost or destroyed in a fire. So Mara Laverett, who wrote the book Devil's Knot about West Memphis Three, and she's a journalist, she went in FOI'd all the records for fires on like 25 or 30 years in West Memphis. Turns out there hadn't been a single fire on public property in West Memphis in all those years.
Wow.
So then finally, I believe I'm right about this, Damian Eccles' attorneys got a court order for them to be able to go into the evidence locker room in West Memphis. They walk in, all the evidence is sitting on a table right by the door. It had been sitting there for 30 years, undisturbed. 10 minutes after that, the police chief in West Memphis resigns. I talked to the mayor.
That's very suspicious.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, and the mayor tells me, I call him up, I'm like, so your police chief just resigns 10 minutes after all this evidence is found? And he's like, it's just a coincidence. I'm like, no. Okay, whatever. So anyway, so they keep fighting it in court. They keep going. One judge, and I was there the day this happened. It was in, I think, June of 2023. Judge. So we have a statute in Arkansas that was passed by the legislature. Because DNA and science is advancing, if it advances to a point where a piece of evidence can be retested because of this advancement, a suspect or someone who's convicted has a constitutional right to have it tested according to law. So under that premise, Damian Eccles and his attorneys went into court and said, hey, we want this stuff tested. A judge came back in court and said, no, you don't have a right to have it tested because you're not in jail. Basically, the only consequence of being convicted of a crime is being actually in prison. The problem is the statute doesn't say that. And anybody with, again, common sense knows that if I've been convicted of being this heinous child killer, I'm suffering other consequences besides only being incarcerated. So it finally went to the Arkansas Supreme Court, and it was a close decision. It was 4-3. And I still can't believe that the three judges who voted to not allow this testing to go forward. So anyway, long story short, the state doesn't want it tested. The people who are convicted of it want it tested. And so now those ligatures are in the lab, and we're just waiting for the results.
Wow. So I something just came up in my head, like some people don't have the knowledge or the networking to be able to know to go after that kind of stuff, that they even have the knowledge that that's out there for them to use. And so these three boys, Damien to me is the most vocal, right? And
Absolutely.
then
Yep.
and I was reading that Miss Kelly was very it from what I read, he was coerced into a lot of the statements that he made. Is he still active in this case, or where are these boys now? Like, how do they fund all of this? Because it's expensive to
Mm-hmm.
get a lot. I know that people are just not pro bono for all of this. So, is it still? I know that, or remember that, like Damien had Hollywood backing him for a long time.
Oh yeah.
So is that where he is getting support? I mean, how does he support himself plus his legal funds and stuff? Is he still? I mean, does he have a GoFundMe or like how is that?
Um, so as far as Damien goes, he wrote a New York Times best-selling book called Life After Death, and so I'm sure he made quite a bit with that. Johnny Depp, who is in my book, my first book, which is in West Memphis about the case. He gave them millions of dollars. Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam, who I've interviewed a couple of times, he is in there, and I'm sure some of these celebrities, I'm sure they still give some money.
Mm-hmm.
As far as Jason goes, I'm not sure how he makes money. I know he had a nonprofit, I think in either Austin, Texas, or Seattle. It was some combination. He lived in both. Um, in fact, one time he sent me a picture of him and Eddie Vedder like on Puget Sound doing stuff, which Eddie Vedder was in the courtroom the day they got released.
Wow.
And I went up to him. I'm like, because they were the day they got released, they were only letting 20 journalists, and there was like 1,200 journalists trying to get in there, and I was one of the 20. And they were only letting 20 journalists. We had to sit in the jury box, and then they were only letting family and friends of the victims and the suspects, and that was it.
Wow.
So I walk in there, and the first thing I see is Eddie Vedder sitting there with Lori Davis, who's Damien's wife, and they're still married to this day. And Natalie Maines from the Chicks is sitting next to Eddie Vedder, and I'm like, I walk up to him, I'm like, how'd you guys get in here? And Lori was like, well, he is Eddie Vedder. I mean, so, and they left with Eddie Vedder when they left the courtroom that day. So Jesse, and this is no joke, when they left that day, because people don't understand this about this case. When people hear that Jesse confessed, go read it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, go read it. Yeah, you'll be shocked. My first book is Witches in West Memphis.
That's the one I started with.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, here we go.
Yeah, and another false confession, because 2 years to the day after these guys got released from prison, almost to the day, a little girl named Jessica was out riding her bike near a town called Half Moon over in Mississippi County. It was down a gravel road. Her dad's getting ready to cook dinner. He looks outside. She's riding a bike. She's 11 years old. She has her little puppy Rybok in the basket. He looks out again, and she's gone. So he waits a few minutes, and then finally he goes outside, starts looking for her. Well, then a neighbor came up and said, hey, her bike is over here. So he sees her bike in the ditch, and she's gone. They spend all night looking for her. Same judicial district, by the way, as the West Memphis Three. It's only about 45 minutes away from West Memphis.
Is that Marion County? Or
that was Mississippi. No, that was Crittenden County.
Crittenden.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So they, might not be the same judicial district, but it's right there. No, I think it is. But anyway, so they look for her all night long, don't find her. The next morning, some girls on an ATV spot her dog 11 miles away, and the dog is walking along the gravel road. Well, the searchers take the dog right back to the spot. Dog takes them right down into a drainage ditch where they find her body. So Within 24 hours, her, um, I'll say, I don't even know what the politically correct term is anymore. But he intellectually challenged neighbor who rode the school bus with her. He was 17, same age as Miss Kelly. He confesses to her murder. There's only one little problem: he didn't do it, and it's been definitively proven he didn't do it. But he still spent almost a year in jail. And I won't spoil any more of it. I'll let you read it,
Yeah.
and then you'll see who actually did it.
Okay.
Who, yeah.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, as far as resources go, Chessie, the day that they left that courtroom, he went right back to the trailer house in West Memphis that they picked him up in 1993.
When I was watching the Paradise Lost, and if you guys have not seen it, you should try to watch it. I don't know, but the mom and the dad, his mom and dad, in that trailer arguing back and forth with each other. I, yeah, that is a special documentary.
Yeah. And I recommend watching the first Paradise Lost and the third one.
Okay.
The second one's not great. And then there's also a documentary called West of Memphis by Amy Berg. It's a great documentary about the case. She did the documentary about Benazir Bhutto, who was the first Pakistani female prime minister who got assassinated.
Mm-hmm.
She did a very famous documentary about that, so she does really good work. So right now we're just waiting on those shoelaces to be tested. Um, and there's obviously the other, elephant in the room is
Yes.
the stepdad,
Yes. Yes.
Terry Hobbs, who I've interviewed several times. Um, and I've always said this: I've never accused him of being the murderer. I've never done that. But there is a much better case that can be made against him than can be made against the three guys actually convicted. They tested every hair in 2007 that was found at that crime scene. Inside the ligature that bound Michael Moore, they found a hair. And that hair is almost certainly a match for him. And he's admitted to me before that he is sure that is his hair. He said, but it's secondary hair transfer. Okay, that's possible. But there's also a hair found on a tree stump next to where the bodies were dumped. That is a likely match for his alibi witness, a guy named David Jacoby. And I've interviewed David Jacoby, and David told me he was not with me in the time frame when the boys vanished. And so they're right there. That's scientific evidence. That's
Mm-hmm.
not. And also, I interviewed him several years ago for CrimeCon.
Right.
And during the interview, I asked him, I said, so do you want this DNA testing to be done? And he said no. And his direct quote was, I hope a judge does the right thing and orders all the evidence destroyed. And he didn't only quote this to me, he also quoted it to a friend of mine who's a podcaster out of Fort Wayne, Indiana. And he said the exact same words to him. And we've got it both recorded. So there's no denying that he said it.
And my question would be to him, this was your stepson. Why would you want that ongoing stuff to be destroyed? Even if those boys weren't, they weren't, why wouldn't you want to find the true killer?
Right.
Like I would want that someone have to pay for it.
Right.
For these kids. So yeah, it's mind-boggling to me. And I think what's more mind-boggling to me is that whoever did this were not sophisticated people, but how that this has gone on that long for them not to solve it, I think is incredible.
Yep.
Like, well, even going back to the Rebecca Gould thing, that the guy that murdered her probably wasn't, and we know that he's not an experienced murderer, like he, it probably happened in the moment or whatever. He probably didn't go, okay, so at this moment in time, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to take the broken piano. So you hear all these things about everywhere you leave DNA, and I just don't understand. I guess that's my question, is how it becomes so looked over for so long when these people, it's not like it's a hit and it's a thought out hit,
Right.
Or that's what I guess is it just the luck of I hate to say luck because it's not they're committing murder, but Do you understand what I'm saying? I
No,
mean, it's like,
it's lucky.
yeah,
I mean, sometimes they get lucky and they get a detective who doesn't know what he's doing or gets blinders. You know, like we were talking before, we didn't talk about it very much, but the problem in our system right now, one of the problems, is that if I'm assigned to a case, let's say I'm a detective, I get assigned to a case, and that case stays with me, and I keep it for the next 15 years. If I've screwed something up, if I'm missing something in there, if I've got blinders, I think it's this person when really actually it's this person over here. The only person that can oversee it is the commander of the CID division, like I'll say with the state police.
okay,
They can come in and say, okay, hey, show me why you're thinking it's this person. Other than that, there's no other recourse.
no,
As no citizen can just walk in and say, can I see the file and see if you're making mistakes? Because I can tell you right now, if Jennifer and I had seen the file in Rebecca's case a year before, when we saw William Miller's name in there,
mm-hmm.
we would have immediately went after him. I mean,
Yeah, because you had already started this discussion with him
yeah,
online,
yeah, and so
so you're like, oh, wait,
even before we started the discussion, just the fact that his name was in there and he was in town, because our analysis said it was a male member of that family.
mm-hmm.
He fits the bill. His last name is Miller because we're a patriarchal society. He's just as much a McCullough as any of the other ones are.
Right.
So, but there's no oversight like that.
Mm.
We have no oversight. So a case can sit and languish in a file that no one can see forever. So if a detective or a police officer is making a mistake, we have no way of knowing.
Wow. So, how many, if you know on the top of your head, how many unsolved murder cases are there in Arkansas?
I'm not
You know?
sure about Arkansas. If I had to guess, I would say probably around. That's a good one. I know there are.
I don't mean to stump you, but
No, no, no,
I
no,
mean,
no. I was thinking there were because there are 280,000 unsolved around the country.
wow.
So
Okay.
if you just look at a percentage of population, that's why I was trying to do the
Yeah.
math in my head. Um, so I won't even give a guess, but I would say it's
I
probably
should have prepped him on that one.
yeah, yeah. I would have figured the math out on that. I'd say at least 500
Yeah.
probably.
You know, there's a couple in Cersei.
Hmm.
There's the beautician,
Yeah.
and then the young man that I know of, the two. Um, there's some really interesting ones in. Has there ever been a serial killer in Arkansas?
Yeah, there was the mass killer who killed like his whole family, like 17. He killed 17 people on
Oh
Christmas
God.
Day down in Russellville,
Hmm.
back in the mid 1980s. In fact, I think we did a podcast episode on it. And then there was the hitchhiker killer. Um, I'm trying to think. I'll give you her contact information. A good friend of mine, she wrote a book about it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And he was operating back, I believe, in the late 40s, early 50s, I think. My dates might be off a little bit. I've read her book; it's great. It sounds like I need to read it again. Um,
So is there a project now that you're looking at? How do you find your projects? Like, I know you're not just Arkansas based, so you look around the country. Is there one that, I mean, you've been involved in so many, but is there one particular one that you've picked up and you're like, okay, I want to really research this and maybe write a book about it? Or is there something current that's going on that's really sparked your interest?
I'm working on a second book about West Memphis Three, just because so much has happened
Hmm.
since my last book. A lot. And also, Jennifer and I are working on a book about Rebecca Gould's case
Okay.
because we've actually never written a book just about her case. And there's a lot of twists and turns, even the ones I haven't even explained today. We don't have time. Um, but he in that case, Billy never gave the names of the other victims.
Right.
Well, we're on to one of the victims. We think we found
Oh,
another one,
oh, wow.
and
Where is he at?
he's in Mariana
Oh,
at the
okay.
East Unit.
Wow. And so she goes and visits him every time she comes in.
Yeah,
I bet he loves that.
yeah, he does.
Yeah.
And what it is that she's trying to build rapport with him so that at some point he will just tell us the rest.
Mhm.
Um, her and I, it's weird because she's kind of more the methodic, scientific minded. I'm more the emotional, blow my top, act stupid. Um, and like he literally like I can go in because I'm a credentialed journalist in the state. I can go in and record.
Mm.
When she goes in, she can't even bring a pencil and paper.
Okay.
So she goes in and talks to him. She's got to run out to the car and tell her husband or whoever,
Mhm.
just start talking into a recorder. Um, so and we're kind of a yin and yang with him. I'm not very nice to him.
Good cop, bad cop
Yeah,
kind of thing.
and he even told her the last time she saw him. This was just a few months ago. He said, "Tell George to try to be a little nicer to me next time he talks to me." And he doesn't understand. Like I was after that dude for 16 years. I didn't know it was him, but I was after him. If
Hmm.
that makes sense.
Right.
So, but yeah, no, we've quite literally. I could show you a map of the United States, and we've got cases in Washington State. We had a case in West Virginia. We've got a case that's brewing in Georgia right now. I had to go testify
Right. You
at
tell
a.
me, yeah, how'd that go?
I testified against him. I think he got off. So I mean,
Uh,
yeah. And then the
Does he
stat,
know your address?
I I could care less. He doesn't want to know my address. I
Yeah.
promise you. Um, but yeah, I mean, and then the statute of limitations ran on some other charges that he could have been convicted of. But like literally the map. I mean, the last book we wrote was a case out of Texas. We were in New Mexico last week. I mean, we were in Colorado a couple of months ago. She lives there, so that was close for her. And as far as me personally, I've written about cases in Illinois, Missouri, Oklahoma, um, New York, um, Massachusetts.
So, do you like the ones that are unsolved or the ones that are solved? Do you like? Is there one
The,
that you particularly like better?
Jennifer and I focus in on cases that are unsolved
Hmm.
because there's, and we don't focus in on super famous cases like John Benet
Right.
Ramsey, let's say, um, just because it's so focused on anyway.
Hmm.
And I always tell people I wrote my first book about West Memphis Three, so I can write my second book about the Creekside Bones because it's full. Every chapter is a different murder case,
Okay.
and none of them are particularly well known, but they are very, and I hate to use the term, but it's just true. They're very interesting cases. Like
Right.
there's a level of heinousness
Hmm.
that is beyond a doubt. Um, but I wanted to tell those stories, but I knew I had to build a base. And West Memphis Three, obviously being one of the most famous
Hmm.
criminal cases ever, you can build a base from that. And then I was like, okay, well, if I'm good enough, if they'll read that book, they'll
Right.
take a chance
You've
on
got to
another
get them
one.
in the door to
Yeah.
introduce them to other things. So, a couple last questions. Why do you think true crime is such a big thing? Like, what what's the draw? Like, for instance, I go down the rabbit hole.
Hmm.
If I start watching true crime, I become a chair detective.
Armchair.
Yeah, I'm just like shouting at the like, duh, how But it is a big thing because there are people out there that listen to this stuff. They go out and investigate for themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, they are on it. So, what do you? Is it just the mystery? Is it the? wh- How would you put that in? Like, how would you explain that?
So here's the thing. I'll give you an example. So when I was doing my first book signings, I did a little book tour, and I'd go to different places. I'd go to bookstores and libraries, and I would go to colleges and universities, casinos. I'd call. I was at a casino last week doing a book signing in New Mexico, but it was they had a true crime convention
Uh-huh.
there. So,
And
um,
now those are big, right?
oh yeah,
I mean, like
yeah,
there's
yeah, they're huge.
yeah, a lot going on.
So that detective in the Rebecca Gould case that I thought was
McNeil.
no, he's the good detective.
Oh, the other one.
The other
Okay.
one who had blinders on and
Yeah.
was not paying attention. So he showed up at one of my book signings one time, but he was incognito. He was wearing like these short shorts and this cut off like flannel shirt, and he literally stood out to me for one reason: because guys don't show up for book signings.
Oh. So,
And if you go to these true crime conventions like CrimeCon that I've spoken at several times, and I've attended several, just as an attendee, everybody there is female. There's no males there.
wow. Okay.
And because I think that the reason it's so popular is number one, it's female driven. And I can walk into my gym and I work out this gigantic gym, and all the girls there that are all college age students, and I will walk in, and all of them will come running up to me when one of these cases, like even Savannah Guthrie's mom
Oh yeah.
disappearing,
Yes, yes.
and they just come running up to me and they want to know everything that I think about it. It's just because I'm in that space. I've been in it for years, written about it, been on all these TV shows and all this other stuff, podcasts. And what it is, and I think this is the psychology of it, is that a man feels like he's in control.
Hmm.
Like I walk in here, there is no way, like you feel like there is no, you don't feel like a threat to me in any scene,
Right.
shape, or form.
Right.
And I'm sure I don't feel like a threat to you, but the potential is there. I'm a man, you're a
Right.
woman. I could
Right.
overpower you. There's
Right.
weapons in here that I could get a hold of. And if I wanted to do something to you, um, there's very little chance you could get away from
Right.
it.
Right.
And so when women live in that world,
Hmm.
they live in a world where, like that Sydney Sutherland girl over.
Yes. Hmm.
And okay, so Quake Llewellyn, the guy that killed her,
Hmm.
they went to high school together.
Right.
He knew her.
Right.
Um, I was at, speaking of my gym, I was standing at the front desk at my gym 2 months before she got murdered. He walked in the door, great big old Opie guy, and he signed up for a membership. And I just remembered him because he looked really goofy. He was kind of dressed goofy.
Right.
And his name was Quake.
Hmm.
And I was like, and I remember it. And then 2 months later, sure enough, he
Right.
hits her with the vehicle and tries to rape her. And then she's dying. And then he kills her. And then,
Hmm.
and he gets caught because he had 360 on his phone and it tracked wherever he went. And his
Right.
father-in-law actually put it on his phone. He didn't know it. Um, so anyway, I think that's what it is, because all my female friends are obsessed with true crime. Now I've got some male friends. I've got a few,
Yeah.
um, but it's mostly female, and they're hardcore.
Right. I mean, when I get on it, I am on it,
Yeah,
and then I have to just back off because it just overwhelms me. But I do know lots of my friends are passionate, and they catch stuff that I would never,
yeah,
like, they it's just crazy what they see at times that I just skim right over, and they're like,
yeah.
"Oh, did you not read that?" And I'm like, "No," but I feel like that it's so interesting, and you're right. I think it is a thing because we are the target most of the time.
95% of the time,
Yes, I mean it's not usually a man that goes missing that anyone
right?
is looking for.
Well,
Children,
yeah.
but they're lesser. Like they can't hardly fight back either.
Well, and most of the time when a child is a target, it's or if that something happens to them, it's a parent.
Right.
It's not. I mean, I hate to say it, but the vast majority of murders are there's two motivating factors: the sexual component or a financial component.
Mhm.
Those are the two.
Or a sibling, right? There
It could
could
be,
be a
yeah,
sibling that
yeah,
the parent is covering up for,
right, or a
like, yeah.
relative, yeah, a
Yes, yeah,
relative, like
yeah.
a close relative. But most of murders in this country occur because of a sexual component or a financial component or something related. Like for instance, in the Elliott murders I was telling you about, that family of four,
Mhm.
um, it's clearly obvious that the little girl was the target, and her mom, dad, and brother were just collateral damage. Whoever killed them wanted her.
Oh, okay.
So they were collateral damage. So, and it's also Jim Clemente, the executive producer and lead writer for the show Criminal Minds.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
We talked about him on the phone too.
we
Yeah.
did,
Mhm.
because he analyzed
Yes.
my interview that I did
Yeah.
with Terry
Yeah.
at CrimeCon.
Yeah. That was interesting too. I
Yeah.
mean, this could go on for hours.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, like, yeah, you've got a lot of knowledge, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, his analysis in the case was is that one of the kids, and he didn't say which one. He just said one of the kids was obviously the target, and the other two were collateral damage. That's, he said, because in the history of the world, we've never had a crime where there were three perpetrators who killed three little kids. That's never happened.
Right.
He said, has it happened though that one person was a target and other people were just collateral damage? Happens every day.
Yeah. O.J. Simpson.
Yeah.
Nicole was probably the target.
So she was the target.
Yeah, and Ron Goldman was just happened to be
Collateral
collateral
damage.
damage. Yeah.
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 100%.
Yeah. That's a sad case too. I mean, it's just on and on and on.
Yeah.
Like it's could go on forever. So, well, thank you. So what's up for you next? What are you doing next?
I just got back from that true crime festival or convention in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'd have to check my calendar. I don't even know. I've
You
got
live
to.
by your calendar.
Yeah, I know I'm speaking at a couple of. I speak at like high schools and colleges. Some. I know I'm doing some of that, and then. But I've got 2 books that I'm working on right now, kind of simultaneously. And I just paid my taxes this week, so
Nice. You're okay.
yeah. So my brain is melted from that.
Yeah. Well, I hope that you'll come to in October for Lit at the Paddle in Batesville. We're gonna invite you there and talk to my uh, bunch of people there. So I'll get you a date for that, and because I know Line College will come out and support you and jump on that. But I really appreciate you coming to the bar,
Hmm.
belling up to the bar with me, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
And
this was
yeah,
fantastic.
I added some. Well, the gin is Gray Whale, and I had been reading about it, so I found it the other day when I was in the liquor store, and I thought, oh, George and I'll try this. So
Yes, and it
yeah,
was good.
I had sampled it before too, so it's great. So thank you very much. I appreciate it, and thank you for staying with us. And so, cheers.
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 Cheers.